I'll introduce our first speaker. This is Tamara. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Okay, good. I always get it. I get worried I'm going to get it wrong.
We have 3 Tamaras at our building, all pronounced differently.
We work together at WWT Application Services. So I wanted her to talk tonight because I went through training and she gave it, and it resonated a lot with me. And I realized that it's like the kind of message our community and like game developers need more often, or that they probably don't get very much. So, so I asked her to talk, and she was gracious enough to say yes. So let's hear what she has to say.
Thanks, Wes. So as Wes said, I'm an Agile coach for WWT AS Application Services, but probably the favorite part of my job is once a month. That's when our new hires go through what we call new employee onboarding. And as a part of onboarding, they get the module that you're actually going to see here. And we don't believe in 100-page deck of PowerPoint slides that put you to sleep. We very much believe in a TBR-style class where you actually get to do a little and learn a little.
Do you want a microphone, or do you want to speak up?
Oh.
Either way, it's fine.
Yeah, the air conditioning.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
Hello, hello.
Thank you. So part of our culture is, it's actually part of our job requirement. If you would go look on Worldwide Technologies jobs, in the description it says for our application services, we must both give and receive feedback, and that is something new to our company, something we're trying to get better at, and this is a way to practice. So who here in their past life, I know I can think back to mine, when did you get your feedback on a cadence at work? Ever?
Cadence?
Yeah, so when I think about my past lives at corporate 500s, it was once a year during my performance appraisal. It was things that I'd forgotten about the previous year, and it was one time. So what did it look like for you?
When you say cadence,
Like how frequently?
how frequently feedback on on the job?
Yeah.
Oh, unfortunately, it doesn't seem often enough. I'd say last time it was more of a, it wasn't any specific feedback, more of a good job, this is going to help people, etc. Which feels good, but it wasn't really much feedback that actually would help improve.
Right.
At the current place I'm working at. At my previous employment, actually, we had code reviews, and those were much more helpful. It depends on the employer, really.
Yeah. So many times people are fearful of feedback because they view it as something that is bad, right? They're scared to get constructive feedback, when really what we're trying to do is grow. And in order to grow, you gotta have something called psychological safety. Has anybody heard of that term? No? You have? So this is fundamental, because what it means is you're allowed to be yourself without fear of retribution of expressing your ideas. And we don't always get that in corporate culture, but it's something that is kind of a prereq to giving feedback without worrying that it might impact your bonus, your pay raise, the projects that you're put on, any of those things. So what we encourage people to do, in the middle is where you came in tonight, just your comfort zone. Maybe not with the fire truck outside, you were feeling a little scared, but typically you're in your comfort zone, that is the place where you feel most comfortable, right? But what that does is it prohibits you from growing at all as a person, a gamer, a developer, whatever the case may be, as a human being. And it's only until you get into this green zone that is both safe, psychologically safe, but maybe a little bit of uncomfortable, do you as a person get to grow. Now, the red zone is where we don't want you to be, right? That's where you completely freaked out. So what I'd like you to do is, with me, do a quick little exercise. Just stand up. And I'd like you to cross your arms in front of you. Good? Okay, now reverse your arms. How's that feel? Weird?
Kind of the same.
Same?
A little strange.
Yeah. Because our comfort zone is how we normally do things, and when we're asked to do something that feels unordinary, it feels a little weird, right? That's where we want you to be. Go ahead, have a seat. So this is the goal. The comfort zone used to be big and blue, now you see the green as being your growth zone. And I actually kind of don't like that slide because it still has panic on there. We never want you to be in panic, but there is some. So the key to feedback is having a growth mindset. A fixed mindset I liken to my father. He's older, he's kind of, I am the way that I am, take me or leave me, I'm not going to do your newfangled stuff, just don't ask me to change, right? That's a fixed mindset. Those folks aren't really receptive to feedback. What we want you to do is shift more to the growth mindset, where it actually is viewed as a positive thing, it's constructive, and it's necessary in order to improve. Where we see this is at Etsy. Does anybody know the 3-Arm Sweater Award? Is anybody familiar with that? No? So this was developed at Etsy. It was for a programmer early, new to his job. I want to say within the first week. And he brought down production his first week. What happened to him? You think?
Yeah.
Nope. They gave him an award. And it's this 3-Arm Sweater Award that they give to one person every year who brings down production in the most spectacular way. For him, it was a CSS file that was critical to the front page. And what's the problem if he can do that on his first week? Where's the problem? Is it with him? Where?
It's with management, whoever put him on it.
Management, you would think, or
The system.
the system. The system was vulnerable enough to be impacted by a new person on their first week on the job. There's a problem there, right? So rather than punishing the person, they instituted a way to reward people because that's helping them learn. And anytime their production system is down, guess what gets popped up? This right here behind me, saying that there's a problem. So they embraced failure rather than shutting it or blaming. So here's some quick feedback don'ts, and this is speaking perfectly to what you said earlier about vague. So the first feedback don't is don't judge the person. What should you be judging when you're giving feedback?
Behavior?
Behavior, right? It's totally okay to call out a behavior. It's never cool to call out the person and say what a jerk they are, right? You can call out the behavior, not the person. And then vague statements is what you just spoke about earlier of saying, great job. Does that tell you anything about what you did? Nothing, because in my mind, if somebody tells me I did a great job, I've got the thing that made it great, but it may not be anything related to what that person was thinking. So make it very specific. Third one is speaking for others. Did you ever have anybody give you feedback where they were like, well, the team thinks that you're fill in the blank? The team. Because they aren't bold enough to say for, I'm sorry?
To say who exactly thought that.
Or say it for themselves.
Say it for themselves. You own the feedback you're giving. It is not your right to say anything about what anybody else thinks. It's you and the person. And this is the biggest trap because this is the safety net for a lot of people. They don't want to admit that it's them that thinks that way. They'd rather have a fictitious crowd of people behind them supporting whatever they're saying. Feedback sandwich. There's a not so nice word for this, but have you ever,
You can say it if you're comfortable.
can I?
Yeah.
So they call this the shit sandwich because you say something positive to the person to kind of ease the blow, right? Then you have the true feedback you want to give them sandwiched in between. And then to make them not feel totally bad, you get the compliment on the end. Has anybody ever had that happen to them? How'd that feel?
Well, if you have it happen to you and you notice it, then it's not very well done.
People can smell that out so easily. And do they actually hear any of the compliment? Do they believe anything you say? Because really it's all sandwiched in between. And all of a sudden nothing becomes valuable, right? So don't do that. Exaggerated with generalities like always or never. So you were always late to the meeting. Always. When really it was one time that week. That happened, y'all? Yeah. It's an easy trap. Oh, and then the next one is psychoanalyze the motives behind the behavior. So who here has a psych degree? Anybody? Usually nobody, but yet how often do people try and dole out psych advice like they're your counselor? Oh, you need anger management, right? And yet we're not qualified, so don't do that. And then too long. So I typically see this if somebody's nervous. They talk about everything under the sun and except for the thing that you really need to talk about, and so it'll go on and on and on. Get to the point. Don't make it a personal attack, and that goes along with judging, but this is not about the person. This is about the behavior that you want to try and change or the behavior that affected and impacted you. And certainly we don't want any threats. That's obvious. So the next one, in true transparency for the world, and I admit this every month to our new employees, I used to consider sarcasm a gift, not a negative thing, right? But in true form, what does sarcasm do to the other person when you use it? What's the impact?
Tries to make them feel stupid.
Make them feel stupid? What else?
Makes them think that you're not taking them seriously.
Yep, you're just joking, right?
Yeah.
I think with every bit of sarcasm, it cuts or hurts because there's a little bit of truth in it, but we call it a joke, right? In order to justify it. All that does is break trust with the person you're trying to give feedback to. Feedback is a question instead of a statement. So, hey, you want to, I'm just trying to think of a good one. Can you think of the one we used, Wes? I'm still thinking about sarcasm like, hey, thanks for being on time when they're 10 minutes late. Do you think maybe you need to do a code review next time? See what I did there? I gave feedback. Something probably negative happened to that person. They probably broke the build or something. And rather than just coming and being direct about it, they had to say it in the form of a question. Any question on these don'ts? These are just practical tips and tricks. Any of these come as a surprise to you?
No, what surprises me over anything is companies don't want to do this.
Ah, yeah.
I've worked with the company for 2.5 years, and I have yet to have any sort of actual formal review.
Interesting. Any other surprises? Things that maybe you've done in the past and that you're all of a sudden you're like, ooh.
I kind of find myself being defensive and being like, I've done a feedback sandwich, but it wasn't that bad. Like, I'm sure I did it better, I did it fine. And it's hard to admit. It's hard to admit when you do these things, I think.
It is because in reality, we've done them all up here. I know I have, right? Or most of them. I don't think I've threatened anybody. My teenagers, maybe. No. But yeah, we're all human. We're all works in progress. So what does good feedback look like? So effective feedback enables the receiver to walk away understanding exactly what he or she did and the impact it had on you. Not on the team, not everybody else, but on you. So we came up with a model to do this. And what we did is we blended this nice little book, easy read, 15 minutes probably. They had a model called SBI. And so we blended that model with clean language and their model and came up with this. Excuse me. So we call this SOI, just rolls off the tongue, I know. So the first part is you describe the situation. So really what this is you bring that person back to the point in time of what you want to give feedback about. So in this example, last Thursday in our retro in downtown North, and downtown North is a conference room for our building. So what that does for the person is it makes them go back to that exact moment in time when the thing happened, right? Non-judgmentally, it's just a situation. Then you describe the observation. So this is where people get caught up. They want to start inserting their own opinions on things rather than an observation. And an observation is something that anybody in the room could see, and they would all say the same thing. So it's not your opinion on that person, just what you saw. So in this one, it's the facts. You started speaking while others were speaking. So imagine yourself in a meeting and that person keeps interrupting, right? Then you explain the interpretation that you made from that behavior. So this person is interrupting, and an easy way for this piece of it is to say, the story I told myself, and we all do this, we all have the story in our mind as to why they did the thing. This is where this comes in. Seems to indicate that you believe what you have to say is most important. Most important meaning more than anybody else's voice, because you keep it interrupting. So that's the story you're telling yourself. And then finally, the impact that it had on you. So how I feel is, when you spoke over me, I felt devalued. That's the outcome of that whole scenario, right? So by using situation, observation, interpretation, and impact, we found it to be highly effective giving each other feedback on our agile development teams. When people have a hard time of finding a recipe, this is just a recipe of how you could do it. And when Wes and I were talking, we're like, we could use this in gaming too. It can be applied to anywhere, so much so that my lovely 15-year-old daughter, I'm driving home the other night, she turns to me and says, Mom, can I give you some feedback? Because I've taught her this model, right? And it's something that you can use in your everyday life. It doesn't have to be work, it doesn't have to be gaming, it's just life. Because we all have the situations where we need to give others feedback and they need to give it to us. So I cringed a little, but then in my heart I'm like, good job, Sarah, because you're applying what's been taught and now you're using it back on me. So what I'd like to do is a little practice. Wes has been nice enough to come up with scenarios where you get to actually practice giving feedback to somebody else in the room. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to pair up, and I'd like you to pair up with somebody that you know the least. So go ahead and stand up.
Hey, find somebody you don't know. We're going to do this thing.
Okay, does everybody have their pair? Yeah, let's let them pair. All right.
I do know where.
So what I'm going to do is somebody pick now in your pair to be the giver of the feedback. Raise your hand. Who's going to be the giver? Yep. And I'm going to give you, just real quickly, I'm going to give you a scenario. This is for you to role play. So you get to role play what's on this card as if the person did the thing that's on the card, and you're giving them feedback on it using the model described up here. And I'll keep that up there as a cheat sheet. So if you're the receiver, don't go easy on them. Don't be a complete jerk. But don't take the feedback just at face value, right? Make them work for it a little bit. All right. So you read that. Don't show it to your partner. This is a good one. Have fun.
I will graciously
Yeah.
accept feedback.
I think this is good.
I know how to accept feedback.
One of my favorites. Yep. There. Yeah, common one. Whoops. That must be meant for you. Oh, no. Let me trade you. There you go. All right, so don't show your partner. Everybody read their card. Everybody understand the instructions? So you're gonna have a couple minutes, like maybe 2 minutes, to use the model up there with your scenario and role play to give your pair feedback. Okay? Go.
When you I realized you were testing So I appreciate it.
He did very well.
Was following the model hard or easy or?
Pretty easy, just the step 3 and 4, I didn't really see the difference.
3 and 4.
Was this a trick question to make sure he actually gave the feedback properly?
No, not at all. There are no mistakes, only learning, right? And the way you learn is by practicing. So the question was, what's the difference between step 3 and 4? The interpretation was kind of the story you created in your head when you saw that thing happen or when you were involved with the thing. So without giving away what your situation was, it's hard to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and I'll use a different one.
It was at a trade show demo. I played this game and the controls were too complicated.
So the controls were too complicated on the game. So the story I told myself would be, it seemed to me when you created the controls for your game, you weren't thinking about the beginner user. That might be the story you tell yourself, right? And you could say, it made me feel stupid because I didn't know how to use the game.
Okay, that's a good.
Does that help? Okay, thanks. Give him a hand. Nice job. All right, how about here? How did he do on his feedback?
Well, I have to say, he didn't do a very good job.
Of convincing you?
Well, I mean, the purpose of the feedback is to convince, is to be polite enough not convince necessarily that person that you're talking to that you're right, so much as to get them to see your constructive criticism, right? So I guess in that sense, it would kind of straight, simple, to the point. It was dirty headphones, and he did bring together proper arguments, I'd say, following the model. But I guess he told me to play really hard to get, so I guess I might have hard-bolted a bit too much, honestly.
So he brings up a good point. What do you do with feedback once you get it?
Just take it to heart and figure out what you can learn from that on.
Yeah. Can you throw it in the trash?
Well, yeah, it's to evaluate.
You be aware of potential bias from the individual that you receive the feedback from.
Yeah, that's a good point. In the end, who's the product owner for you?
My aunt. No, wait.
Yeah, you're the product owner for your product, which is you. What you do with that is up to you. What we're saying here is the way you grow, though, is by taking that feedback to heart and really marinating on it and saying, is there some truth in this? So we had a developer, she no longer works at our company, and I adore her. I talked to her before I got hired on. And we have something called a 360 feedback review where the team gives each other feedback on a regular cadence. And she got a card passed to her, much like this, that said, you know what? You're really crabby when you don't eat lunch. And she said to herself, screw you. You know, like, I am not crabby. You know, she was thinking of this in her head, right?
Did she eat lunch before that?
Probably not, right? And so she said, I wanted to throw that feedback in the trash until 4 more index cards got passed to me that all said, you're really crabby when you don't eat lunch. So when you have 5 instances, then it becomes no longer biased, right? Then you have to really take to heart of like, maybe there's some truth in this. And she's like, so I started eating lunch. I made that a priority in my day. I didn't get too busy to not eat. I made that happen because it was impacting my team.
One of the things I've noticed, one of the things I've noticed watching other people get feedback in those 360s is the people that say thank you, regardless of whether they actually act on it, are people that I want to give feedback to more often.
Yeah.
Because regardless of whether they act on it, I trust that they want to grow with it. And I noticed that for myself, I try to do that, but generally I try to explain the context of like why I act that way, and I think that has the opposite effect. I think it makes people shut down and not want to give feedback as much. So I think it's better to say thank you and then stew on it a little bit, and then like maybe have a private conversation later if it's like something that you want to address in a way that they're not expecting. So.
Absolutely. So good point. I really appreciate 360 feedbacks or any feedback that you get to walk away with something. Because to Wes's point, during our 360s, we have a whole stack of cards, one from every person on our team. And you can then go back to your desk or wherever and really kind of digest them and let them marinate and then have a follow-up conversation if you need to. At least you've had the conversation first. So maybe we should practice this on the next round of just saying thank you when they're done. How about that? All right, so over
I
here.
already did that.
You did?
Yes.
A+. So you were the giver? How did he do on his feedback?
I would say we definitely got to S and O and a little bit of I. I think it was hard to understand the impact without being in that situation. So.
Yeah. It's not easy. It takes practice, right? And that's why we're starting practice here. But once you get this down, it becomes very natural because it takes all the like weirdness out of it. It just, for whatever reason, and I think it's the blend of clean language within this model, that it just takes kind of some of the bad behavior
feedback on it, so I just had it with the card. But it was more of how I took it. So that would be up to him when I hand it to you.
Okay.
She just said, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Thanks. Pretty much.
I should have been more careful in my research.
So what we're practicing now is meta feedback. It's feedback about the feedback, right? And it's to get you used to giving more feedback. So it might feel a little uncomfortable at first, but really this is how we learn. I'm sorry?
So this feels like a feedback loop.
A feedback loop?
With
Nice.
noise here.
All right, so you had the card, right? How do you do on his feedback?
He did all right on his feedback. He's a little unclear on the prompt,
Okay.
but he covered SOI pretty well.
Nice.
I did not understand the card properly either.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, sometimes there's misinterpretation. That's why texting is awful. I think we were talking, who was I talking to about this before? I think US, about,
Can't read inflections.
yes, you can't read inflections, tone, sarcasm, anything, right? And so it's really the conversation that's valuable in this.
That's what the slash S is for, right?
That's why you put
Yes.
the poop emoji.
Right.
All right, how about this fair?
I was giving the feedback.
Okay.
Okay.
How do you do?
I think he did well. The particular topic was, without giving specifics away, more of a work performance. Being late, and I was the one late in the group, so I guess.
That was not intentional.
Well, anyways, I think on the positive side, he, although it was a work performance issue, he was not trying to be angry or forceful with it, which I think is important, to not try to escalate the situation, especially when the other person receiving feedback might be defensive.
Yeah.
You don't want to trigger those things, because obviously that's the first thing that I was imagining, saying, hey, I'm going to get defensive about this. And because then you start coming up with, maybe you're not thinking,
Yeah.
you're not absorbing that feedback.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, go ahead and hand me back the cards. Thank you. And if you were the receiver and you thought you got off the hook, you did not. We're going to do this again. This time the receiver is the giver. Can I grab this? All right. There you go. Okay. Hopefully I got these. Oh, sorry about that. All right. You? Okay. 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 Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so go ahead and take a look at your card. Again, you're going to role play as if the person did the thing in your hand. And you're going to use situation, observation, interpretation, and impact as your model up here, as your cheat sheet. So I'm going to give you just a minute to review. And receivers, remember to say thank you at the end of this, no matter how you feel. It's funny when I do these exercises with people, all of a sudden it becomes real and it's totally fake, right? But because it's constructive feedback, it doesn't feel good and you don't know what to do with it, and all of a sudden it's about you, and it's not. So have fun with it and role play. So I'm gonna give you 2 minutes, go ahead and give your feedback.
Can you explain
encourage
Yeah,
grabbing the shit that they have, but like, it's catered towards a PG audience. Absolutely. I was thinking like, oh my god, green tea might be a green tea might be now. Cigarettes, so it's just not yeah.
I don't know why I'm doing this. This makes me quiet. Should have said that at the beginning. Sorry about that. All right, so we're going to debrief again, and this time we're going to have you read off your situation.
Someone on your team submitted code that created a major bug and you need them to address it.
Yeah, so he's a bug creator, right? So how do you do on his feedback to you?
You did very good at that.
Very good? Was it hard to follow the model?
A little bit because it's so factual. Like the bug either exists or it doesn't exist.
Right. But how many times have people tried to say, oh, that couldn't be my code, right? That must be Johnny's code?
Works on my box. I don't know.
That works on my box, for sure.
That doesn't
Yeah.
help if you're on a web server.
Thank you. All right, let me go over here. All right, you want to read your situation?
At a trade show demo station, you play a game and the controls are too complicated or unintuitive.
All right, so how did he do in his feedback?
Okay.
He stated what the problem was and everything just fine, so he did. It looked very forced. But I
Yeah.
think that's just because of the thing, so.
Yeah, I want to thank Wes before I forget. Wes created all of these situations, having been in the gaming world. So give him a hand. All right. You want to read your situation?
At a trade show station, you play a game and it contains content you find inappropriate.
Ah, okay. So how did you take that?
Overall, it went really well, and he went through all the parts pretty much perfectly. The only thing is he got a little bit dangerously close to doing the shit sandwich that you mentioned.
Ah, yeah.
But otherwise, like I'm ready to do, you did great.
Thank you. All right, I'll take that. All right, back here. Would you like to read yours, please?
The sound effects your audio person is making for you are really loud compared to the music.
Compared to the music. And how did you do?
I think you did really well.
I know we don't get
Constructive criticism on the sound effects, like white noise being too loud compared to the other music. And I tried to retort by saying it's supposed to be rewarding, but he's like, well, maybe take another look at it or something. I think it's too loud.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I'd like to think that everybody's really thank you for the feedback, but in reality, they're not always thankful. And so as human beings, we're going to try and deflect it, or try and ignore it like it never happened, or we're going to get angry, or we're just going to shut down, right? So there's all these emotions that are going on with the person you're giving it to. So to actually have a hard conversation with high emotions is hard, but don't give up. That's my advice to you. Just keep at it, keep with the model, keep trying, because the more you do it, the more it's going to feel just normal rather than weird. Because I'm sure it feels weird right now. I'm doing it the first time, right? Did it feel weird?
Given not a lot of context for some of these, it's kind of just guess as you can go kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've noticed.
So what was the situation?
It was the business wants to add intrusive ads or monetize the game in a way that would drive users.
Okay. So how did you take that?
Try and make a premium package for no ads kind of thing. I mean, that's how most games are going to nowadays anyway.
Yeah. How was it giving the feedback?
I was like pretty strictly to the model, and I think for me, like in doing it in real time, the designer who proposes a side objective that isn't relevant to the game's theme. So we just came up with a little scenario of sorts where it was a cute, adorable bunny game, and he was creating content that was blood and gore. As you do.
How is that inappropriate?
I considered it inappropriate for a G-rated game, and to stick with a DLC perspective for future reference. By the way, Bunny Heist, and they collect diamonds.
So how'd she do?
She did great. I noticed when doing this, a lot of because they're so high level, a lot of the situation and observation have to kind of be creative.
Yeah.
So I think that's fun, but it also kind of gets in the way of like the giving the actual feedback part. So,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you. All right, everybody give yourselves a hand. That's really good for your first time. Something we do, because I know everybody wants to gravitate towards positive first, is we'll do both a positive and constructive set of feedback when we do our Team 360s. That may help you in your delivery of feeling more comfortable. But you can use both the positive and constructive using the models. So I hope you learned something new tonight. I hope you get to actually apply it, whether it be at home or at work or gaming. And that's the end of my talk, so thank you. Somebody else?
So, Randy, you guys do you want to go first, or?
I'll let
There you go.
the other guy go first.
Okay.
The other guy.
You want to set up? Okay, this is probably going to take a few minutes, but we're going to show off some games now.
Is it just us two today?
Yeah.
Well, there's tons of it.
It's appropriate to the meeting. The meeting is appropriate.
So another part of feedback that goes along well with this, and thank you, Tamara.
Thank you.
Is it's a good idea to ask people for feedback. So, do you want people to give you feedback on your game tonight, or do you want to wait?
I mean, I don't care. I it's just a black screen. Jeez.
I like your game.
Black screen.
I mean, I want to make it very clear that this is a very work in progress game with plans of being in works for at least another year and a half or so. So, a lot still to implement, but I still appreciate feedback, of course.
Are we live?
We are.
Yes, I do.
Hold on. Oh, it's not working on this screen.
Yep. You might need to
Works
do
on my box.
Yeah, it's high definition content protection.
function something.
I don't know these functions.
Let me
I
fix
think
it.
No, wait, that one. No, that's, oh yeah.
F5?
No, it's the
Maybe.
TVs
It
are
might be
taking
function.
over the content protection.
Oh,
Well, the picture there shows like you changing the screen.
well, that's frustrating.
So it's either,
Nope, I did something else. I ran again.
oh, cool. Alright.
But this might break that, but we'll try it.
Ooh. There's music. We might need to adjust the volume over
Okay. Still trying to
here.
do
Do you know how to adjust the volume on there? Yes, we need to.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you not familiar with how cats and dogs work? It's the same premise. They're like, I like your scritching, but I want it over here.
Is it?
I'm not sure why
It's the
it's
same premise.
The wall part I think is fine.
Yeah, the wall part's fine.
Cancel
It's
it out.
the capture card.
They're just trying to adjust the, we might have to adjust the volume. And we can do that.
It's a real person.
I believe so.
being free.
And you're using real does that make any sense? But you still have to have all the things that you've got to manage.
Worst comes to worst, I'll just have to point
Oh,
out.
It's probably okay.
That's
gonna be. Oh, nice.
It worked for a second. Well, it's showing it to the screens, or those, not.
It's not even showing it.
Well, it was.
the biggest of these projects is Disney.
Do you want to just switch
Yeah,
now?
I'll just switch it so this gets
See
closer
if it's
there.
see if they.
I need to figure out a better way to.
This is more reliable.
If not, like.
Or maybe your game has all this
Oh yeah, it's all NDA. I mean, you use that.
Yep. Well, it's not for gamers.
If it's not showing on.
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
It's not showing up there. It definitely won't show up on the capture bar.
Just, it's a video game.
It's gonna stay.
There's we'll see what
You might,
happens.
there's a small chance you might get out of here and go settings to like change the resolution.
Yeah. I don't have a way to go in the game when I'm in the
Yes, I just
If it was displaying at like 64 by 64 pixels or something like that, then it would.
No, the game's displayed at
Can you change your resolution to It did show up there for a second.
Yeah, I know, it's weird.
It's that, yes.
Maybe that's why.
Not a problem, but a lot of the skateboard phones are.
Oh, wait. I saw flicker.
Yeah, it's been flickering.
And you need to sort of figure out what's just trivia competition instead of
dying.
It's actually going to be.
You can try yours.
Yeah.
Did I do anything?
I love it. They're great.
My cable's only this long.
Yeah,
So.
I was talking about a
You'll have to get closer to
company
the screen.
that's built a.
Yeah, go ahead and try to change your resolution.
It's not a skateboard, I mean, a skateboard's kind of
Just go to your desktop
Salt Lake
and
City,
it goes back.
Evermore Park.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
These are set up for 1920 by 10.
Yeah, it's like high
Let's
fantasy,
see.
right?
I'm excited.
Hit Windows key and
That
E.
lower
Right,
right,
it's
far
from
left,
my
far lower right.
And I
Take
watched
you back to the desktop.
every video different things, but
Yes.
Display settings.
But like, yeah, I think that's what,
Yeah, that's right.
I think there's gonna be a future entertainment.
Yeah. What the heck?
And honestly, I don't know why.
What should you try?
1920
What
by
Sony
1080 is
Corporation
supposed
has
to be.
like developed their own version of Pokemon Go that
Hit
happens
Windows
in
key
their
and
balls to
then
get people
tap
in.
P.
You know, like take that
Set
content.
it to duplicate.
It's been extended.
This is the version, if I was signed.
Well, if it goes in
you
full
know,
screen,
or
it'll
just small
use
spell.
this.
Yeah.
Or second screen.
You come into one store,
It might be the cable.
you've got like
But then again, it's
user
seeing the second screen, so I don't know.
who's going to enhance your phone, find the things
Oh, wait,
that
it might be
only you
this.
can see now through your phone.
Oh, that's good.
And have this huge AR Pokemon Go
So you said
experience
it's the wrong
that happens in their malls
No,
because
it's
they
not,
need
but-
people walking
It's
through
like
stores.
walk through what like Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, so you have one store that you're set up, and you have someone managing it, just like people register. And then one store that you're branching out of the experience.
You could actually have Snap experience and print out your photos.
That'd be cool. But you don't even got keep it tied. Like you could, you could basically do generic Final Fantasy or whatever theme
Oh,
you
man.
want, you know, and have like
Your laptop is
an
that's what it
experience
is.
that takes place in the real world.
Oh, yeah, it's the second screen only.
Not
Oh,
going
that's good.
get them to go there. Just I don't know.
It'd be great for a Halloween
Let's
theme.
try.
Have like
Yeah.
have
we had it
things
working
like in
once
the
through
phone
here.
and then
You
like
have
the
that
screen, the actors pop out with chainsaws kind of thing.
Oh, it's not on PC.
Like you
I
can
think
do
we
it,
have
it's content.
Yeah.
But like if you can tie it to physical places, you can get people to actually show up there. You know, like and that's and if you're a person who's in that level of physical development, especially if you're failing like all are.
Okay.
I'm ranting, sorry.
Just cursed. You are definitely cursed.
Well, I think they've got at least some issues with like buildings becoming condemned and no longer being up to code, and as a result, they have to bring it up to code. in
Like
order
full
to-
yeah, I mean that's
So now I know it was probably not my
it's like just
No, it's probably not. But your system actually had a catch
through
over.
there.
Or
Yeah,
like
that's
on
what I'm
this.
saying is it's like every alternate is going to work with that.
Do you want to share?
But somebody's got to figure out how to bring people in by getting people into streams. Yeah. Part of those, I think, are going to be interactive.
The stream's up or down?
I think it's still up. You got to figure out a way to take video games, put them in a physical place.
It was plugged in through this one, it was working, but it wasn't capturing on there.
Yeah. But like,
I may have to plug it
the
back
trouble
in.
with VR is the helmet, the headsets, the helmets, and it's bulky. There's a learning curve, and it can be.
So if this doesn't work, then
It's
then
not.
I'm
It's
sure.
not insurmountable. Certainly not insurmountable.
Okay, the last time I did VR, I flipped over a couch.
The screen is turned on, I believe.
Just at home, or did you go to like one of the?
You know, we don't have that many people here. We could just show your.
I was
Your
sat
game.
down in couch
Like,
and
put
we
point
had
the camera at it.
one of those,
Yeah.
what is it, like a.
Well, I can output from my
Behind it,
laptop
but
and
there's
just use the
nothing
webcam as a
behind it,
camera.
and
Yeah.
On his.
I jumped so bad that I
Okay,
flipped the
let's
couch
do that then.
and broke
Yep.
the table.
Get on the screen without the. Yeah.
It was a love seat, I might add. It was
It might be a little slow, but
The-
people
The
do.
coolest
I
VR
also won't
experience
get
I
the,
ever
sound
did was
really,
a company called The Forward, the Star Wars one, and they have you dressed as a stormtrooper or whatever. So you're already like in,
Oh, that's awesome.
but
Cool.
the experience the stream section, you walk over and they say, okay, pick up one of those guns.
Okay.
Oh,
This is how long
up
it
to
is.
the.
So,
Can you-
can you spin it around and put it here?
Yeah. Are we?
We're going on an adventure!
We're hacking this.
Wow, it looks so.
Yeah.
I'll have to change.
No, it's
Right,
fine.
settings
Wars,
and
this is
stuff
how you
or
enter the
something.
Matrix.
Yeah. Here, I
Stand
can
it
hold
against
that
the
for
screen and see each other going into infinity. Oh boy.
Oh, now
Man,
this is
the resolution in Infinity is terrible.
I thought you guys were gonna get it on the big screen. There was
We were trying to.
Is that not on the big screen?
This is on the big
Laptop has
screen.
content protection.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Is that just Acer thing or big screen for like a second?
It's on the big screen right
Yeah,
now.
it was for a second, but
Oh.
can't get it to work at all anymore.
There's not that many of us. We could just gather around.
Yeah.
Then the stream wouldn't get it.
Oh, fair enough.
MoDOT, where are they located? I know MoDOT, I know IDOT.
So let me grab this. You get your hands in the right spot, and then I can.
Oh, God.
Wow, this is a choreographed.
Staring at it, just like,
Okay, so this is a game. Sorry for the delay. This is called Arcane Champions. It's a 1 to 4 player cooperative dungeon crawler. It also has a PvP mode, which I'm not 100% sure if I'm actually going to implement or not because PvP is a lot of work. But for right now, we have just the dungeon crawler part. Start off with your match by choosing your skin. As you level up, you'll obtain more skins. And basically, the premise of this game, if you've ever played anything like Ziggurat or any real roguelites, kind of roguelikes, but not necessarily, a little bit less intense. The goal is just to proceed through this dungeon, get all the way to the end, make it as long as you can until you die. Most everything that you gain, you'll end up losing after you die, except for, of course, these skins that you get as you level up. You'll encounter different monsters along the way, and since it is a cooperative game, you'll also be able to do all this with your friends or whoever. It's if I had 2 hands, I would be able to do this a lot easier right now. But it is basically a first-person shooter mixed with all that old other formula I was mentioning. It's been like a sort of a hybrid. Oh my god.
Don't make me laugh, it makes the webcam shake.
Sorry. But as you keep going through the levels, you'll get to different floors. There's 5 different zones throughout the game. And you're essentially start off outside, you enter into a castle, you go into the prisons, and then you go even deeper underground and experience a wide variety of monsters and different kinds of things as you progress throughout this dungeon. You find different spells, you find different items, all different kinds of stuff. but you're going to lose it all after this is over. I'm just running away from him and stuff shooting at the moment. You'll see that as every time I turn, it's a like a 90-degree turn. It's always break-based, just like a lot of the older dungeon crawlers are, but it's real-time instead of turn-based. And he was poisoned, so he just died. I was hoping to encounter some of the other monsters. But it's all slimes. There we go.
This is exactly how they go.
See, through the webcam, it just gives that CRT experience.
There we go. But yeah, so now everything would be reset whenever I begin again, and that's right. There's, like I said, there's also a PvP mode. There's actually a couple different modes, free for all, basically like a capture the flag kind of one. But yeah, that's all I have for right now. If you want to move on to doing your thing. Awesome. Thank you. Also, this is made on Godot, which I know you were asking about. Thank you.
That's yeah, it's good. I'm a bit over here.
What'd you say was made in?
Godot.
Infinity.
And beyond!
Okay.
Is this like aimed correctly?
It doesn't matter. I'm
that
streaming
solo so
direct.
far?
It's getting it directly.
What'd you
from
say?
the laptop, so it doesn't matter.
Is it solo so far? Is that what you said?
Just just yourself, or do you have a...
Oh, by myself? I have artists hired to do all the animations because I can't animate. I'm doing all the other art by myself. And then I have a musician hired to do all the music.
So what was that percentage at the top?
Oh, that's your level up percentage. How much?
Are you using any story elements, or are you really just focused on gameplay?
As right now, I'm just focused on gameplay. I think I might include some like hidden treasures and stuff like that you'll find. I already have some like bookshelf sprites, and there's as you progress through the game, you'll also get little upgrades that level up certain stats, which are books. And I plan on having some books that'll actually have little like bits of lore written into them. But otherwise, not much story.
So I don't. The shadows looked different than last time we saw it. I might just not something.
If you were looking up there, it was because of the webcam made the shadows a lot better.
He was right up close too, though. But the shadows, yes. Before I didn't even have shadows.
Yeah.
So yeah, I added in shadows and a lot of more processing related things recently.
Is it just like from a single direction, or is it like?
Yeah, there's just the sun. It's just one direction. But then as you get into the dungeon, actually, the sun obviously won't affect anything. There'll be torches, different things like that. Other sources of light.
You're gonna have some underground dungeon?
Oh yeah. You start off on top and then you go deep down into the crypts.
So I'm not sure how much the microphone's picking up, but this is the game I made for the Low-Rez Game Jam. The Low-Rez Jam is a 2 to 3 week long jam where your game has to be in a 64 pixel by 64 pixel screen. So I made all of the art and everything. The only thing I didn't make was music. Not really in Unity. This is as big as I could scale it. That's as good as we're gonna get. So in the top left is health and stamina, and then talk of people. Signs and stuff. This is actually using a bitmap font, not the stuff, so it's just sprites. You can pick up ones, but you can't actually do anything with them. There's a edge maze here that you can try to figure out.
What's he doing here? Is it a roll?
Yeah, this is a dodge mechanic. This is kind of it, you just kind of run around exploring the area. And when I made the intro screen work, I broke the going back to the main menu, it just said black. So I did make another area that's a dungeon type area, but I never got any of the enemies or the boss done. So just at the very end, there's a room with I think it's 160 slimes in it as a replacement for the boss. So that's pretty much it. Any questions on it or anything?
So how long did the jam last, and how much time did you spend on it?
It was the 1st through the 17th, I think. I probably only spent the amount of what I would on a normal jam all total. So probably 25, 30 hours maybe.
Are you gonna do more with it?
Maybe. Knowing me, probably not.
Is it procedural? I don't remember if you said, or
No,
is it?
I used the script I made a while ago called Tile Master, which is much easier to use than Unity's implementation of tiles.
So how many different sets of tile maps are
2. Every single image in that game can fit into a 256 by 256 pixel image.
What software did you use for your sprites?
Photoshop, which is not the best for pixel art, but it's what I use. So.
I mean, you could put the grid and it'll be fine. It works.
Yeah, I turn on the grid units and stuff like that in Photoshop, so since I know I wanted it to be, I think it was 8 pixel by 8 pixel grid, you can turn on the grids in subsections and it'll show you every individual pixel. And it's going to take forever because I'm streaming.
Is Photoshop a preference, or?
Yeah, it's just personal preference. I've been using it since version 5.5, and that came out in 1998. So, been using it a while.
Fair enough.
This was my first original slime. Isn't he great? But if you hit Control and apostrophe, it'll turn on and off the grid. And you can go into the unit settings. You might have clicked the wrong one. Nope. So right here where it's grid line every 70, so you can set it to 32 and then have it have 32 subdivisions. And so now each one of these is what the tile would be in the game. Anything else?
Can you show you said it was a 256 by 256. Can you show what it looks
I have it in separate images, but I could fit it all in that. But I can show you one of the tile sets if you want. So that's the entire size of all the overworld. So that's everything. No animated water or anything. Anything else? Okay. Do you want the mic or off?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'm sure that that everyone will, Greg and Randy will stick around after. You can probably play their games or talk to them about them. Other than that, I'm gonna go into infinity here. Yeah, other than that, thank you everyone for coming out. I hope you got something valuable out of the talks. And the upcoming events that are happening in the community, this Thursday is the drink up at Heavy Rift Brewery. It's from like 8 to 11. So if you want to come and just hang out and talk about what you're doing, please show up. Rift.
There's no T.
Yeah, there's no T. Heavy Rift. Yeah, sorry. You'll figure it out. And then is it Friday or just Saturday and Sunday?
Saturday.
Yeah. Saturday and Sunday at Pixel Pop, which is a big event that we're sponsoring the party on Saturday. So if you haven't, if you want to go to that party, you can get on the Pixel Pop Festival homepage and find a link somewhere in there to RSVP for the party, because you do have to RSVP to go, but you don't have to be going to Pixel Pop to get in. And a lot of local developers. Is anyone here going to be demoing at our booth? So Tim, no. You got your own tape? Fancy. Yeah. So, but we're at the co-op is setting up a booth where local people with games are going to be showing off what they've developed, and then also there's games from all over the world, I think. So it's gonna be really awesome. So yeah, if you don't have a ticket, you should get one soon. And after that, I think we have an event here next month on the 9th, or yeah, we haven't decided what it's going to be yet, but yeah. So that's it. Thank you again for coming out. Oh, thanks to Riot and to Tina for staying with us. So thank you very much. Yep. And then thanks again to all our speakers. And yeah, have a good night.